I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. If you haven't signed the register in the back of the room, we would appreciate it if you'd do so. Roll call of the board.
Ms. Dawn. Here. Mr. Hernandez.
Present.
Mr. Jaramillo. Here. Ms. Quintero.
Present.
Mr. Crouch.
Present. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda submitted.
Second.
Roll call.
Ms. Dawn.
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez.
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo.
Yes.
Ms. Quintero.
Aye.
Mr. Crouch.
Aye. Next, we have governing board comments. Mr. Jaramillo,
I'll wait till we have the.
law conference.
Ricky.
Mr. Hernandez.
None at this time, Mr. Couch. Thank you.
Ms. Quintero.
Yes. So, on September 14th, if you all want to meet at Tucson Boulevard in Drexel and walk the kids to school at 7:15 in the morning to Los Amigos, join us at that Walmart that's in the corner.
Is there a particular reason?
I'm sorry.
Walk and bike to school.
Walk to
Oh,
school.
okay.
Walk and roll to school that day. Sorry, walk and roll. It's like, yeah, I can't talk. It's like, but join the kids
Ms. Dawn.
Did they change where we meet? Because we've always met
at Cattle Town. No, now we're meeting at Walmart.
Closer.
Shorter walk.
You can ride your bike.
We should have done a desert drive.
To climb out as many of those rocks and there's always so many rocks and glasses. I'm going to wait for the law.
Okay. Yeah, I'm away as well for the law conference wrap-up. Next, we have superintendent's report. Mr. Holmes.
President Crouch, members of the government, members of the audience. I'll start by recognizing our wonderful teacher, Tia Begay, who's featured on a local teacher documentary sponsored by Tucson's Values Teachers. So we have Los Niños Elementary School teacher Tia Begay, who's one of our 3 local educators profiled as part of the short film Teaching in Arizona. Tia is a member of the Navajo tribe from northern Arizona who came to Tucson from the Navajo Reservation in 1998 to earn her bachelor's degree from the University of Arizona. She has been a general education teacher for students in grades 1st through 4th and taught physical education for students in kindergarten through 8th grade. Tia also spent several years coaching and mentoring others as a Title I program facilitator. She says her most satisfying days are when she feels that a student is able to articulate learning in their own words. She also strives to find ways to fund her students' personal libraries because she believes that books should be in everyone's home. The film will be screened at the Let's Talk Ed event on September 20th. I believe it's at Tucson Convention Center as part of the 10th anniversary of the Tucson Values Teachers celebration. I'm be privileged to be moderating a panel with the 3 teachers who will actually be featured in the film that evening. So it's going to be a wonderful event. We also have our Sunnyside Exceptional Education Department moves to adopt career exploration model. Sunnyside's Exceptional Education Program at Sunnyside will receive funding to establish a school-to-work training lab for students in our Life Skills program. Students can engage in 5 areas of exploration: computer technology, construction and industrial, processing, production, consumer service areas, and business marketing. The transition from school to work program, the TSW, is supported in partnership with the Arizona Department of Economic Security and Rehabilitation Services Administration, an agency within DES which provides vocational rehabilitation services to individuals with disabilities in preparation for gainful employment. So again, once again, thanks to Dr. Williams for always kind of pushing us forward in these wonderful areas for our special education students. Thank you, Dr. Williams. We also, here's our plug. So join Los Amigos Tech Academy as we engage in a walk and roll 2018. Los Amigos Tech Academy kicks off its annual walk and roll tradition this Friday at 7:30 a.m. at the Walmart on Drexel and Tucson Boulevard. Please join our students and community partners, including the Pima County Sheriff's Department and Living Streets Alliance, as we walk to school together to promote safer streets, community engagement, and physical activity. We also have Liberty Elementary celebrating Grandparents' Day. So Liberty Elementary celebrated Grandparents' Day 2018 last week by crowning its Grandpa King. That's kind of cute. Mr. Jaime with 19 grandchildren, and Liberty Rams grandmother queen, Miss Isabel, with 23 grandchildren. Thank you to our sponsors, Los Jarritos, Viva Burrito Company, and Suspiros Cakes. You can see our king and queen there in the pictures as well. And just one quick plug that's not here, but as you've seen in the paper, that Mariachi Cobre is doing auditions for members to join the group. Unfortunately, I'm not going out for auditions there, but although I covet going playing. But now that we have Roberto Martinez, who is a former Cobre member in our as our Blue Devil mariachi director, he had Steve Carrillo come out, spend 2 hours with our students this afternoon to do a free master class on vocal lessons. And so I had the opportunity to sit in and watch Steve in action. I hadn't seen Steve in years, and it was just wonderful to see his interaction with students. Just, remembering the days when Mariachi Cobre used to actually run all the educational conferences for the Tucson Community Center at that time, right? It was a wonderful opportunity for our kids. But talk about a teacher who was exhibiting formative assessment in real time, high expectations of our kids, and really just pushing some real great vocal techniques, and our kids were just super, super excited with the opportunity to have such a star. What a wonderful, powerful voice that Steve still has. So again, thank you to Mariachi Cobre. More particularly, thank you to Steve Carrillo, and just donating his time to our community and to our kids for a couple hours prior to going off and auditioning more folks for Cobre. So, and that get a highlight of my day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Next, we have recognitions. If the board would meet me out in the front, and Mr. Holmes.
Okay. All right. Oh, you want the narrative first? Sure, go ahead and read the names.
The Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board would like to acknowledge and recognize the efforts of our law enforcement community, students, and all those involved in last summer's active shooter training. During the first week of June in 2018, the Sunnyside School District hosted active shooter training in collaboration with several law enforcement partners, including Pima County Sheriff's Department, Tucson Police Department, and Mariana Police Department. The training relied on realistic, situational preparedness exercises dramatized by students from Desert View High School's drama department. The augmented scenarios included administrators, teachers, and support staff to the stresses of campus threats in real time, and provided participants with the opportunity to evaluate different responses. The training received positive media coverage in several outlets and was attended by Sunnyside District employees as well as staff from nearby districts. So now we'd like to recognize those that were involved.
Deputy Ryan Powell from Pima County Sheriff's Department. Sergeant William Corrales from Tucson Police Department. Oh, okay. Raul Hodgers, Desert View High School Security. I didn't want to shake hands. Chris Higgins, Sunnyside Security. Okay. No shaking hands with me. Frank Morales, Sunnyside Security. That's what they told me at work. Levi Olive, Desert View High School. Oh, I'm sorry. Erica Quintero, drama teacher. Hi. Morana Officer David Samarano. Hi. Now the Desert View High School students. Oh. Who else? Come on up. These are students. Alejandra, just Alvarado. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Rene.
Renee.
Camacho.
Renee Camacho. Anissa? What, Dean?
Dean, yeah.
Dean? Dean Frisky. All right, awesome. Nino Sanchez. Okay. I'm on drugs, okay?
I now understand what you were trying to do.
Yes.
Have we missed anyone? Oh, yeah. Come on.
What's his name? Jose? What's his name? Jose Castellum.
You can't forget the junior.
Right.
He's not here?
Okay, do we have any other students here?
Desert View High School alumni? Anyone? Going once?
You want to read one of the certificates?
Come on up.
Come on down. And Miss Rosa.
Yes.
And Ms. Rosas.
I'm just going to read one of the certificates. They all read the same as far as I know. The Sunnyside Unified School District Governing Board would like to acknowledge and recognize your efforts during the 2018 active shooter training. The training relied on realistic situational preparedness exercises which provided participants with a unique opportunity to prepare in the event of a life-threatening crisis. I think all the board participated. It was really realistic. It was extremely good training, and as a board member, I was really honored to be able to go through the training and see what the situations are, how people need to react. I failed in some of my situations. Huh? Well, but anyway, I was really impressed by the level of training and the level of the students in the activities, because they made it real. And even though you knew it was fake, it didn't seem that way. Anyone else like to say anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank all of you. The partnerships that we have had, are incredible, and we wouldn't have been able to do this if it weren't for all the partnerships that we have had over the years, and they just keep getting stronger and stronger every year. It just seems like, wow, we're really good and close knit, and then all of a sudden we do more. So it's just really great. Thank you so very much for all the partnerships, and I want to thank all of the students also. People are still talking about how great it was and what they learned, and oh yeah, on that day, blah blah blah. So people are still talking about it, and so I want to thank all the students, the administrators, all of our partners from outside, the administrators from central office and from the site, for what you do. It is something that I think you do so well that when we stop and think about it, it is this collaboration that is always going to keep us feeling safe and being safe. Thank you.
How about you stand in the front?
Can we go ahead and pass out the certificates for this?
Yeah, this is the certificate.
You want a picture with two lines? Come on up front.
Would any of the students or officers like to speak?
No, you're fine, you're fine. You're stars. You guys need to be in front. Hold on. We need certificates.
Is there another stack for the students, or are they all in the first stack? Should we just go into Ms. Rose's?
Mysteries.
Thank you.
Are those the students?
Chris is over here.
Nino. Hey, Nino.
Mr. Morales. Levi's not here.
The blank one's going to the top. Don't worry about
It's the only one? It's the only record.
Maybe Frank could do these two.
I'm gonna sterilize that mic.
Well, you can.
Down with that.
Just watch our names.
Ms. Miller? Do we have any call? We didn't have any call the audience cards. Next on the agenda is consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, motion passes. Next item on the agenda is general functions, support of Legendary Teacher Day, September 27th, 2018. Mr. Holmes?
Sure. President Crouch, members of the governing board, members of the audience, on September 27th is Legendary Teacher Day, I know Mr. Mercado has been working closely with our new SCA president, Ms. Victoria Schroeder, who's over at Desert View, to figure out ways in which we can continue to recognize the wonderful teachers. And so there's some criteria that we're going to actually put in place and working with SCA to make sure that we recognize those teachers on that particular day. That being said, the purpose of this board presentation is really to propose a governing board resolution. We've done this the last couple of years, working with Nick Clement, who kind of started that, former superintendent over in Flowing Wells, who's been really leading the charge to make sure that we have a day that we recognize teachers who have made a difference in our lives. And if anything, after we read this resolution, if everyone can be reminded that on that particular day, if you can take a special time to recognize a teacher that's made a difference in your life, whether it be years back or more recently, I think always recognizing the people that do the work every day in the classroom is super important. And so that's the purpose of this agenda item, but if you don't mind, Mr. Crouch, I can read the...
I would appreciate it, Mr. Holmes.
Sure. So this is a governing board resolution in support of Legendary Teacher Day for Thursday, September 27th, 2018. Whereas the governing board of Sunnyside Unified School District believes we have all had special teachers that made a significant difference in our lives. And whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District's governing board recognizes that those teachers demonstrated unique skills, allowing them to transform their deep content knowledge into life-changing student learning. And whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District's governing board highly values the caring family culture created by those teachers. And whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District's governing board understands that we often do not fully understand and recognize the profound influence teachers have on our future until we have lived our future. And whereas the Sunnyside Unified School District's governing board realizes the importance of taking time to really fully recognize the legendary teachers in our lives. Therefore, be it resolved, the Sunnyside Unified School District's governing board does hereby affirm its support for September 27th, 2018 as Legendary Teacher Day. We encourage our entire community to take time on this day and contact the legendary teacher in your life and express your gratitude for the difference they made in your life.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Is there any discussion? Ms. Stone?
I'd like to move that we approve the resolution in support of Legendary Teacher Day, Thursday, September the 27th, 2019.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Stone?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Jaramillo?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye, and my legendary teacher was Mr. Stanley Neal, my fourth grade teacher at Sunnyside Elementary School.
Who's that?
Stanley Neal, Stan Neal. Next on the agenda is ARS 15-481 and 15-491 Bond and Override Expenditure Report, fiscal year 2017-18. Mr. Encinas?
Thank you, President Crouch, board members, Superintendent Holmes, audience. As required by statute, any school district that has override elections authorized by its voters or a bond election authorized by its voters must annually report to the community the financial expenditures that were incurred that fiscal year. Sunnyside School District, although it does not have an override and has not had an override since 2014, we do have the requirement to report our expenditures for bond funds that were approved by the voters in November 2011. As you will recall, that the voters did authorize that the district spend $88 million for the expenditure of bond funds that would be used for the following purposes: $32 million for remodel and renovation, $27 million for technology, $1 million for security, $10 million for athletics,
and $6 million for transportation, for a grand total of $88 million. Hopefully that comes up to 88. As of last year, as of this year, in the last financial report submitted to and it's included in the attachments, Sunnyside School District has spent $76,353,208. At this time last year, we had spent $71,625,000. So during the fiscal year 2017-18 year, we spent a little over $4.7 million of bond funds. We have a little over $2 million in the county treasurer's office of remaining bond funds that were made available through the previous bond sale. The last remaining bond authorization is $9.4 million, and that is scheduled to be sold this coming fall. We've been in the process of communicating with our counsel and our consultants to sell the last remaining authorization of a little over $9 million prior to, we're scheduling, hopefully by having the bond sale and bond proceeds by the bond sale completed by November 28th. So we're trying to take advantage of interest rates. With the interest rates going up, Federal Reserve increasing the interest rate, we want to make sure that we take advantage of the relatively low interest rate, but they're bound to go higher, so we're going to take advantage of that. Included in the report that's attached to the agenda are financial reports that I live off of, and that's my forte. But Superintendent Holmes requested that we provide the governing board and the community some illustration in terms of how we spent the money that the community did approve back in 2011. And I prepared a short presentation, a PowerPoint presentation, that basically shows some of the areas that we have focused on in terms of improving our facilities and providing a better education to our students. What's not included in any of these photos is $6 million worth of buses and over $24 million worth of laptop computers. We have purchased thousands of laptops for both staff and our students in hopes of giving them an edge in terms of what we envisioned was the coming of education in America, with the fact that we can't live without computers. So I think we've given our students that advantage and a step ahead of a lot of school districts that I think are trying to catch up to where we're at. So my thanks go to the community of Sunnyside, and also I can't proceed any further without mentioning the service and dedication of our bond advisory committee members, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Verdugo, Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Lopez, Ms. Tomain, Ms. Romero, and Mr. Sproul, he recently resigned, and Ms. Baca, who also resigned. We've had some members who did resign, and they've served on the committee faithfully and guided us through the times where requests were being made for the expenditure of these bond funds, and all the funds that were expended were made with their direction and their guidance and your approval. So without any further delay, just some pictures as to illustrate exactly how we've expended some of the funds. One of the priorities that was made really by the school side, especially at the elementary level, was the condition of our playground equipment at the elementary schools, and we have undertaken the task of providing every school, every K-8 school, as far as every elementary school, I say K-8 school because Sierra Middle School is included in there, with new playground equipment. So we were looking at what did it look before. You know, most of our playgrounds are just old playground equipment with no shade structures at all and sand in the play area, to the goal of having every school at least have one shaded area with engineered wood fiber to meet the requirements that a playground area be as safe as possible. The other thing that we're still looking at here is once we install all the new equipment, our next goal is to make sure that we have ADA access to the playground equipment by those students that would require assistance. So that's our next goal after it's all installed. So anyway, here's some playground equipment that we installed. On the left is Los Niños, on the right Los Amigos. That's on the left Esperanza, Sierra Middle School, Sierra Middle School, Craycroft on the left, and then Elvira Elementary School on the right there. The next major area that we utilize bond funds, $3 million worth of bond funds out of about approximately a $5.7 million project for bathroom renovation. $3 million was used out of bond funds. Our goal was to remodel our bathrooms at all the school sites. And from basically, here's a bathroom that was undertaken, knocked down, and here's before to that, to partially finished. So that's our goal, to have all our restrooms look like that. And we have a standardized appearance and height level of tile for elementary, middle school, and high school. Partitions are all uniform in terms of being able to have one set of manufacturer for the toilets, for the partitions, and that's for the bathroom area. The other area we hit was parking lots. Every parking lot at every school was repaved or resealed. The worst parking lot in the whole district is right here. Yeah. And I think that's one of the goals, is after we install the solar, is if possible we can hit and repave the parking lot here in the administration building. The other thing, as far as the middle schools, it's Sierra Middle School has a wood floor. Laufer was a middle school that was built with the SFB funds, and they had a gymnasium type floor. But Apollo and Challenger did not have. They had just regular 9 by 11 tile, and one of the complaints was kids were just slipping and sliding all over the place. So we actually went there and spent some bond funds and put new gymnasium flooring and spruced up the gyms, put new scoreboards in there. At Apollo, we put a backstop because we had complaints from the neighbors saying we have a bunch of softballs going over there. We put a higher fence there. Every wrought iron fence in every school site was refinished, repainted. So that gave new life to our wrought iron fences for security purposes. We also hit the areas of flooring and carpeting throughout the whole school district. And this is a matter of a sample of Apollo. One of the things in terms of technology, we never had a backup generator for this facility. In case we had power outages, we had no backup power. So through Mr. Baca's input and his guidance, we went out and acquired a generator and had installed. So, and then I guess some Challenger fencing, Challenger painting, Challenger all the fascia and all the some of the accented block were repainted. A new gym floor was installed at Challenger and scoreboard. And at Craycroft, the playground equipment and then also the painting. Desert View, we had new carpeting installed. The gymnasiums at both high schools were redone. Desert View High School had their floors concrete polished. We removed tile and carpet that was in there. We polished concrete. One of the things that have been requested right now of Bach, and it's going to be brought to their attention at the next Bach meeting, is in consultation with Mr. Valdez and Mr. Valencia. They're recommending that rather than go on contract out to have the remaining concrete, tile removed and then polished, why don't we just buy the piece of equipment ourselves and have it done, do ourselves rather than go on contract that out. We're looking at about $25,000 to buy a machine that otherwise we'd be looking at about $7 to $8 a square foot just to have concrete polished. So we're looking at doing that rather than contracting out. Desert View, if you recall, that used to be on the left-hand side, there used to be the old security monitor's residence area. That was converted to parking for the softball field, and access to the softball field, and a pathway to the actual softball field. There was no pathway to be able to get from the parking lot to the softball field at Desert View High School. That restroom that you see on the right-hand side, that's the restroom that's outside the ROTC building. We had proposals as high as recall, I think it was over $80,000 to demolish and rebuild it. We had our maintenance department go in there and do the work themselves, and it came out to less than $20,000 to redo it. So kudos to our maintenance department. And then here's Desert View Fine Arts. The new Fine Arts building is being constructed as we speak right now. Scheduled completion for that building, total completion is the end of September. So that's on the left-hand side. That's the area that used to hold the practice area with the steps. It was the whole old area was regutted and remodeled and converted to new space. On the right-hand side, there's a new area of new restrooms between the two areas, and that's going to be the new addition there. It's going to be, from what I see, it's going to be a fantastic facility for for our fine arts program there at Desert View High School.
I heard Sunnyside has a request for it as well.
I understand that they are now the Me Too school. Desert View High School, we recall how that facility looked, because it was a bare bones athletic improvement that we made back in 1988, 89, when we added the football field. And we've completely addressed that area and had it regraded, and the drainage has been addressed. The track has been installed. The lights were relamped with more efficient lighting. The baseball batting cage was installed just this spring, and it's scheduled to have its nets installed the next couple of weeks, because I think what is that fall ball is going to be starting. Yes, sir.
Mr. Hamel?
Has that drainage on the track been corrected as well?
There's still low spots there. We still have not paid out the vendor because they still haven't addressed the shot put discus area, which is right.
Which right
there.
north
Right, yeah,
side.
just right on here somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. And they still haven't done their work. We haven't paid them for it. They're scheduled to redo it.
And how about the issue with the grass growing through the track?
The grass
There's spots that grass is actually growing
on the track.
through through the surface that was just applied.
We'll look into
So,
that. I was
yeah.
not aware of that.
Yeah. But it does look nice. I mean,
Compared to what we had before.
oh yeah.
I don't think we had not.
Well, they hadn't had a home meet like
Years.
forever.
Drexel, carpeting and floor again was addressed. The other thing that's missing here, or people lose context of or thought of, is the HVAC systems. Back in 2010, I recall that was the biggest issue in this district, where heating or cooling was inconsistent and just falling apart. We spent millions of dollars, and you have an attachment that shows and highlights some various projects that was what we've done with our HVAC. We spent millions of dollars to upgrade our HVAC with more energy efficient equipment. We installed energy management systems so that when a room is not occupied, the air conditioner isn't on and the lights aren't on until somebody occupies it. So there's been a cost savings. Some painting at Drexel, at Elvira. We had the issue of security. We installed enhanced security measures there with wrought iron and switch access gates, parking lots. New fencing, we called that one on the right-hand side. That's the area that there used to be a security trailer there. We have removed all security trailers from all district property, and really, security has not been better than ever before. That's as a result of increased security measures and our alarm systems and cameras, yes, and our roving security. So at Esperanza, we also addressed the painting there. We also addressed the landscaping issues initially. Gallego Primary, there was a parking lot, and then we did have we connected the Gallego Primary with the old Chaparral, which is now Gallego Intermediate. And we spent over $10 million for Gallego Intermediate to remodel it. That's what it looks like now. If you go inside that building, it's a fantastic facility. At Lawford, it was minor expenditures there, some parking lots and painting. And that on the left is security. They call it shack, but it's security shelter. Okay. I hate the word shack. Security facility. Okay. And that's the inside of the facility right there with a monitor, which shows the different cameras throughout the campus that the security monitor can look at. Los Amigos, we did painting and landscaping and some carpeting and flooring. Los Niños, we installed the brand new roof there, new AC units, and painted the fence and playground equipment. If you're familiar with, recall Los Niños, toward the backside, once you enter the school, there's two wings. There used to be Aleppo pines all over the place, and one of them actually almost fell on top of the building. We had those removed, and that's what the new court area looks like now. It's open with new growth, new plants. Mission Manor, just parking there. Santa Clara, we have new AC units and carpet and floor. At Sierra, we did the wrought iron fence again and installed a big old basketball court in the backside of the school. and playground equipment. Star, we had new shade structure, fencing. Some of you, that is the pump station for the water tank that's back there. It's a required water tank because of the low pressure of water there at some of your areas. So we had to revamp that, the whole pumping system, did the fencing, and then the parking lot, and polished concrete floors and carpeting. And the Sunnyside High School did the same thing as far as the batting cage and the track, and carpeting the auditorium, the LRC, and the shade structure for the freshman academy, and then the golf complex at Sunnyside High School. And there's 3 members of our BOC committee, Ms. Lopez, Ms. Bach, and Mr. Rodriguez, and that's basically it. We still have $9.5 million to spend, and we're looking forward to that sale that's coming at the end of this month.
Well, Mr. Encinas, it was really nice when school started off this year that there was a lot of press going on about other schools or neighboring districts that had AC problems, and we didn't.
Yes.
And it was great.
It's due to the community's, effort or their confidence in us to spend those bond funds, and also a lot to do with Cindy Beauvais in terms of managing our energy management program. And I don't think that lady sleeps. I think she answers that phone whenever, on weekends or after work. People forget about notifying her about functions, because I think she's tighter with the money than I am, because she'll shut down an AC unit if she thinks nobody's going to be using it. She'll shut it down. So anyway,
Mr. Encinas, you said that we're going to go out for the final purchase of
sale of
bonds.
bond funds?
Sale of bonds this next year. How long do we have to use those bond funds? Once
After
we-
the sale, 3 years.
3 years.
Okay, after the sale, we have 3 years to spend those funds. So,
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Don?
Okay, a couple of quick things. When I first saw the 61 PowerPoint slides, I thought, oh my gosh. But no, it went real quick, and it was really entertaining. I know you were a little bit worried you might not, keep our attention, but no, you did, because it was fantastic, the slides and pictures. What I'd like to see is if we could, because I always think about all the people that aren't here and don't see all this fantastic stuff that we've done with Vaughn. If we could put it onto our website, and we can add it there so that people can go in there and take a look and see all the different things that have happened at their schools and throughout the entire district. Because you did some great pictures here of what has happened with the bond. It hasn't disappeared.
Okay,
It has
yes.
gone to some actual things that people can see in their communities,
Right.
and that the students can be able to have and enjoy.
okay.
I also want to thank you for the pie shirts and the columns, all the different things that you did to help us to understand where the money went. It made it really simple to see a pie chart. It made it really simple to see the bars and the graphs and how it all went.
Where we spend how much and how much is left over from the
So
original.
I think even something like maybe either the pie chart or the bar graph or both,
Okay.
if we could add that to the PowerPoint that we put onto the website, so that people can see,
Okay.
this money, this didn't disappear. It went here and it went there, and it went very proportionally to what we said we were gonna do with the bond. And so I think it would just help our community understand it more. We don't have to send it all out through the Sunnyside story and stuff like that. We can just put it on something like this. And in the Sunnyside story, maybe a little thing that's saying, come to the website to see all the different things that we've done.
Mr. Holmes and Ms. Quintero and Mr. Hernandez. Oh,
I just want to make a comment just back to Mr. Encina's point with our bond advisory committee. I mean, it's been, you see all these things, but many times you lose sight, because these are major projects that with really short staff and trying to actively manage the magnitude. I mean, we've made mistakes. I'll be real honest. There's some things we've got to go back, look at the track, look at certain things, but it's easy to get caught in those little details that we still need to fix, when in reality there's been some major improvements. As I look at colleagues from other districts and think about the AC units, think about, the buses we front-loaded, although it's still now, ironically, we have to look at new buses, but things that we take for granted that we've actually improved. And sometimes it's not when easy to see, like the paintings, but it's what we take pride in. It's part of what makes us special and unique. And so I really want to acknowledge the Bond Advisory Committee, because they hold us accountable for the work. So if anyone thinks the money is spent frivolously or on bad things, they got to come to a Bach meeting or watch some of those videos, because they question every single expense, and rightfully so. And so as I look at this, I think it was a good reminder of the investment that's been made in our district, but more importantly, acknowledging the work that's done behind the scenes. Our maintenance crew have taken a lot more. We have a smaller crew than we ever had before. And to save money, just got to remember on some of these projects, for purposes of making the money stretch, our maintenance crew has taken on a lot more responsibility that could have easily contracted out. So the fact that they're constantly on it, I want to acknowledge the maintenance department, because they've saved our district money by taking on some of these projects, and it's extended their workload as we're beginning to kind of reshape kind of what that's going to look like. But I appreciate the picture. I think we do have to acknowledge this work on our website much more prominently, so that people can see things that we've, I think, forgotten ourselves as we were putting together this PowerPoint. Like, well, I forgot this, and this is not even a complete picture. I mean, there's many more things that are lost here that I think should be something that we recognize. So thank you, Mr. Encinas, with working with our BOC and then our maintenance crew and all the folks that are doing the behind-the-scenes work to make this all happen.
Mr. Hernandez?
Thank you, Mr. Crouch. Thank you, Mr. Encinas, for highlighting some of the projects that we had this last year. I think in light of the fact that the School Facilities Board has not been fully funded for an extended period of time, having this bond has been crucial for us to be even able to maintain a semblance of a normal school building. So to not only be able to have buildings that are up to snuff, but also be able to have some of the things that really enrich our students' lives, especially some of the facilities, but to even do basic things like remodeling the bathrooms. I just visited another school district in my legislative district where I was just appalled to see the condition of the things that they had in the bathrooms, and I was like, oh, right, because we don't give money to school districts to fix this on the list of priorities, even though it's an important thing. It often falls off the radar, so I'm glad to see that we've had the ability to make some of these changes. Mr. Crouch already asked my question. So within 3 years, we have to spend from the sale. And then when is the last sale that we're anticipating making?
November 28th. This November 28th.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. Encinas, and thank you for your diligent effort on keeping track of what's going on and being involved with it. I know it's your oversight on it has been just absolutely fantastic, but Bach has done a really good job on caring about what projects are. They go out to the sites. It's not something where they just sat down in a room and talked about it. They've done a lot of walking around and looking it over. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, no action was required on that item. Next item on the agenda is Arizona School Board Association, ASBA pre-law conference, and delegate assembly recap. Who would like to start? Ms. Dong, go right
Then
ahead.
I'll go after. I'll go after.
I'm backing up.
You're fine. I'm just making sure you're okay. I know that Becky and Daniel, you weren't able to go to this law conference, but I want to tell you too that Sunnyside makes us proud. We heard about a lot of things that we have already, implemented here. People like Dr. Favela, restorative justice, those are the kind of things that are happening in some of these other districts, and so they're bringing it to us as far as, something new for Arizona to be looking at and stuff. And I'm thinking in the back of my mind, yeah, but look at Dr. Favela and what she has done. And your partnerships with the police, your partnerships with the court center, the juvenile court center, have really been instrumental in us helping to make sure that what we do is, effective. And we're not sending a bunch of our kids to juvie. We're not having a lot of our kids get felonies and get misdemeanors. because that stays on their records, you know, and now it's public knowledge because of the laws that are out there. People can go in there and use it against a child that has made a mistake, that by, you know, little reasons, you know, they make these choices sometimes when they're 15 years old and when they're 16 years old. And they make these choices, and you kind of wonder, you know, why is that going to follow them when they're 22 and 23 and trying to get jobs, or when they're 18 and 19 and going into colleges and stuff like that, something that they did when they were 15. So thank you so very much for doing that. But it makes us really proud. But there are other things that I know that we found that were new that we have to take a look at too. And I'm really glad that you and Dr. Bergman were able to go and learn some of that stuff also. One of the things though that we have to kind of keep reminding everybody is that when they send out emails, they have to be careful at the school sites. You know, they mean well. Teachers want to let us all know about something and stuff like that, but we have to be careful and just tell them to send it out one board member at a time. You know, send it to me, send it to Becky, and, you know, send it to all of us. We want to hear, but send it to all, because if we start answering back, you know, there's a lot of problems that can occur with emails, and a lot of the times, yeah, it's not going to cause a problem. But if we get into the habit of those smaller emails that will not cause a problem, sometimes an email will come through that will cause a problem. So we have to be very careful with all of that. One of the things that I really enjoyed was that, you know, sometimes what we do is that we have new things happening and we can't seem to you know, always know what the laws are for some of these things. And one of the things, for example, that we have to start to really keep on top of, and I know we have, and I know that Frank and others have helped us with some of the stuff when it comes to and others with social media. And the social media is getting a lot of people in trouble. A lot of, not just the students, a lot of the adults, a lot of the staff are getting into trouble because of social media. And so I think that's something that we have to constantly be reminding, you know, our staff. We don't want to lose them for a little something that they thought was funny, you know, and it turns out that it wasn't. And then all of a sudden we have to make a decision, and it just makes it tough because we know that they you know, their hearts are in the right place when it comes to our kids. And so, and the students, the same thing. They don't realize that what they put here on their social media now is there forever. People do, you know, they might be able to take it off, but then people do something called snapshots.
Snapchat.
Or they take a
Snapchat.
picture, they take a picture of what's there, and you might take it down because you realize, whoops, but still, you know, it's still there in somebody's thing. And then also, some of the other quick things that we really need to look at is things about the walkouts and the walk-ins in two different ways. First of all, our staff. And so we need to probably have things in place ahead of time. We did a fantastic job, I thought, as a district last year at the end of the year when we had our staff, you know, do the walkouts and also the walk-ins. I thought we did a fantastic job. But now, one of the things that reminded us is now, what do you say to your students that want to walk out for a variety of reasons that are happening right now? DACA, the gun violence, all those things. Our students are becoming more conscious about, you know, what's going on in the world around them. And so they might want to start doing these walkouts. And, you know, their teachers have to be real careful because they know their teachers, you know, didn't come to school at the end of the year. And so what do we do then? How do we address it? And there are ways, but those are kind of the things that we have to think about. So I think it was a great conference. I think everybody enjoyed themselves with the sessions. Oh my gosh, they kept you, it was exhausting. You went from one to another to another to another. You saw everybody running from one session to another. Thank goodness they have a lot of restrooms in the women's restrooms because it was crazy in between the sessions. But all the speakers were right on, so it was a fantastic conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dong. Actually, Mr. Hernandez was there.
I wasn't able to stay the whole time, but I was.
He had to go back to the Capitol a few times, but
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Crouch. I think one of the more interesting speakers actually had to do with autism and how we work with students who are exceptional in different ways. So one of the things, and I'll bring it back up at the end of this board meeting, is maybe have a conversation about how we work here in the district to make not just accommodations, but really empower our autistic students, and really looking at the whole spectrum, because I think a lot of people that I talked to after that session were surprised, because even though you hear the phrase, there's a spectrum, just understanding how different and how successful students can be and young people can be who are autistic. So I think that was a really interesting conversation. And even though that wasn't a presentation in the same way that like here's how you follow this and here's how you follow this law, I think that was one of the more impactful presentations that I've seen in a really long time at a school board association meeting. And it was, I think, really important. I want to buy the book. I didn't get a chance to buy it because the line was a little long. And it was sold out, so I'll have to order it on Amazon. So I wanted to see, what we can do just to have an overview of how we work with our students who are on the autism spectrum. I think one of the more interesting conversations has to do with procurement and the new laws that have been put into place. And if any of you have read the Arizona Republic in just the last 48 hours, you'll see that one of my colleagues at the Capitol has been using the law in a very interesting way. And in the last legislative session, one of the things that I think most people didn't realize is that the last minute amendments were put into the budget that exempted charter schools from having to follow procurement laws, which has meant that we have one legislator who owns a private for-profit charter company to now sell it to a nonprofit and be the manager and operate the school and make a $12 to $30 million profit off of the state of Arizona, which is just insane to me. So we have one district that does something wrong, and then we overcorrect and overreact, and then we put in all these new laws that increase the amount of staff time, the amount of software that we have to use to make sure that nobody steals or, is unethical, and yet here we are on the other side where legislators write themselves out of those things and make a profit. So it was just really, I think, disturbing for a lot of people to hear that, and because I had seen it at the legislature, it was frustrating. I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been saying for the last 2 years, that people keep doing these changes to benefit themselves, and very often, because it happens in the middle of the night, people don't know about it. So I'm glad that finally the Republic is putting out more information about it. There was another opportunity that I had to actually talk to Chris Cotterman, who is the lobbyist for the Arizona School Board Association. And one of the things that we suggested, it's a little difficult or a little different, I guess, because I'm on the board and in the legislature. But for most other school districts, having school districts invite legislators to board meetings so that they can hear about some of the good work that they're doing and some of the challenges that they're facing, and also having school board members go and shadow a legislator. So we were talking about starting a program where legislators would invite school board members to come and spend the day with them so they can see kind of how the Capitol works. So that way, when big decisions are being made, legislators have a direct connection to some of the folks in administration and in the school boards, so that it's not scrambling the day before a big vote and saying, like, I need to hear from people in Rio Rico, or I need to hear from people in Sunnyside. So really making sure that we have a two-way line of communication, and he seemed really open to that. And also, one of the things that I suggested to Chris Cotterman was having us who have been on school boards during some of the county meetings go and talk to some of the county meetings, because we've worn both hats, and maybe hear some of the things that school board members are bringing up. And there were a couple of ideas that people have brought to me in terms of legislation, and I said, the big thing that I want to do is, before I drop these, give a heads up to the association, so that way they can see what impact it would have on schools, so that way we're not introducing things in January, the deadline is late January, and then having a bunch of people be surprised and say, why are you creating a new mandate? So I think increasing lines of communication and really utilizing board members to really help impact the public policy process is something that has not been done as much in the past. It's a handful of people who are at the leadership of the association, but not individual board members at each of the districts. And I think because we have so many school boards around the state in all of these legislative districts, they can really help impact decision makers at the Capitol. So not just the ASBA board or some of the county leads, but really having all school boards have at least one board member who's the point of contact. So as topics are coming up to the legislature that have to do with education, we're having some voice from school boards and school districts as opposed to waiting until after the fact to give a report out of what's happened. So I hope that as I leave the board, you will all keep the pressure up on the association to make sure that happens a little bit more frequently, because far too often what ends up happening at the Capitol is we only hear from one side, and we don't hear a ton of information from educators, from school board members, from the administration. We'll hear from the lobbyists maybe if they have time, but there's 90 of us. So if they can deputize a couple people at school districts to help reach out and to help amplify the message, I think that would be really, really helpful. So it's both here's what happened at the conference, but also one of the things that I hope you all will continue after I leave the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Mr. Amil.
Thank you, sir. Well, there was quite a few different topics that were covered, from school safety, the do's and don'ts, a recommendation about arming our teachers with handguns and weapons and whatnot, which was very interesting, because the recommendation was from a former police chief of Mesa, which he says because of the lack of training, he doesn't recommend it. And I personally wouldn't recommend arming any of our teachers with weapons and put them in that situation. As far as safety, school safety goes, we covered the school safety was a big topic, the FERPA, HIPAA, a lot of the policies that we have from K through 12, the do's and don'ts from apprehension, searches, illegal searches, and some of the stories that we heard were pretty outrageous of what some other schools have done. And luckily we're from what we see and what we hear, we're on the right track. And the connection and collaboration with our law enforcement, which is kudos to our district, because we've been doing that for quite a few years. The student handbooks, employee handbooks, and the list goes on. But the one that intrigued me was the one with the Army our teachers with weapons, which is kind of a big no-no. There's, I could go on all night with this, because it was really, really interesting. Treating each other with respect and dignity, whether it's from us here, our staff, students to students, administrators to their subordinates. Also, what Ms. Dong was referring to, the technology, not only to the staff, students, but also to the board as far as messaging each other. Mm-hmm. It's a big no-no, because there's been, a quorum when they start emailing themselves and or texting themselves, and that's a big no-no as well. So that also the use of marijuana in our schools, and alcohol or drugs, and also the topic of what do we do with the folks that are carrying a card, a marijuana card. Should they be penalized? Well, if they're not on school property, we really can't do anything to them, because it's a part of the state policy that they can consume when not at work. The same thing goes with anything, with alcohol and anything else. But it was probably one of the better conferences that we've attended, I think, and time well spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hotmill. I was there for the pre-conference on Wednesday, the conference on Thursday and Friday, and then the delegate assembly on Saturday. Ms. Dong served as delegate from our board on the Saturday. She did a great job on helping decide what legislative issues ASBA will lobby for. And I served on the legislative committee where we set up the proposals, and I think it went very, very well this year. It was probably much smoother than it has been in past years. It's a little different format, 4 primary headings, and then everything grouped underneath it. And I thought it went very well. But thank you, Ms. Dong, for serving as delegate.
You're welcome. After you're done, I'd like to just hit a little bit on something that I saw at the delegate that really was sad as far as our district is concerned. So when you're done, just real quick.
One of the session I went to on Wednesday, the pre-session, was about school safety, and there were a lot of issues involved with it. I'm going to forward Ms. Miller all of the materials from it, and if you could distribute those to the board and to Mr. Holmes, I'd appreciate it. One of the things that really struck me was FERPA. I teach at NAU. Every year we have to go through FERPA training. It's, you don't ever violate FERPA, and that's not the message we got at the pre-conference. FERPA is for educational records. It's not for all records of a student. And they were saying that sometimes we overreact, and if a teacher makes an observation about a student, that's not a FERPA record. If one student gives us information about something that's going to be happening from another student, that's not FERPA. And they were just saying we're losing some information because we're being too afraid of what's going on. They also said FERPA is not something where you get sued individually. You don't have it's not a criminal violation. It's institutional. It's for the entire institution, and they've taken very few cases beyond just saying you shouldn't do that, but no real penalties or problems if someone has violated. But they were saying we may want to revisit that and look at it and make sure everyone understands that if a teacher makes an observation, that's not an educational record. I'm not going to try and go through all the sessions. Every one of them was intense.
Great.
It was very exhausting to be there. But also, Dr. Favela and Dr. Bergman were both there. Would either of you like to add anything to the conversation?
I went to that one too. I agree that a lot of the sessions really dealt with some practical tips that districts can use, especially things about students going to and from school, the difference between being able to discipline them, but not necessarily are being liable. So I found that some of those little practical things were really good. Certainly the security part, I didn't agree also with the whole gun situation. That got a little much. But, I agree they were very, very well done sessions. Took a lot of notes for Mr. Holmes. and of course the one on the student that life animated.
That was
Susskind, who won a Pulitzer Prize for that book. And you can download that video online, and it's called Life Animated, about his autistic son. And how he turned out just to be the most amazing kid. But they really stressed the whole issue of neurodiversity.
Yes.
And he said if you give him an IQ test, he's not going to come out looking very high on an IQ test, but he's an amazingly smart kid on what he could do. So I was very inspired by that. And I tried to get in line to get the book and to get it autographed, but they ran out. Thank you for allowing us to go.
Dr. Bergman?
Well, and I tend to go to the sessions that deal with employment and certification and issues surrounding our employees. And they had, for the first time, the state board had a presentation on the investigation committee and certification and what's happening in our world today because of some social media issues and can happen to employees and what their role is in that. Because, you know, you always hear about the investigation unit, but I had never had faces to names. Now I have faces to names. I know who they are, and I know they're very limited in their staff and why they don't respond now. I mean, when you send them emails and what it is that you need to wait for in the process that you need to take to be able to get information about an employee who may have had fingerprints suspended or their certification suspended, and what I need to do now to support our staff who are going through that and making sure I'm following and putting in the pieces that can help them move through that process. Because it is, and it's not just happening here, it's happening everywhere across the state. So it was a critical piece for me to have, and I think to share it with Ms. Emsley and the HR staff and Mr. Holmes, so he's aware of what it is that we need to do. But there was also an excellent presentation on special ed and dealt with the whole issues of our shortages and how they're changing some of the recommendations who can work with them because of the shortages that I need to share with Dr. Williams as well. And then there was a whole session on equality. And I don't know if any of you got to go to that one, but it had to do with what happened at Starbucks and what happened at
LA Fitness.
LA Fitness. That was an excellent session on equality and getting individuals to understand the difference between targeting and how people are reacting to certain things today. But it was very well done and extremely informative. I wish it could go out more to more individuals so they could understand, because a lot of it's done with reaction, not rather thinking through or processing the piece, and what both of those companies had to do to backtrack and to put things in place so that it doesn't happen again to people of color. So I come back with so much information. It is extremely beneficial.
And also, since it's a law conference, a lot of what we get are updates on the laws, changes, expected changes, and the effects and how we should deal with them. So that's a big component of the conference. Ms. Dong, you had something else to add?
Just really quick, because as you were talking about the legislative day on Saturday, I think it's really good that we're both there and that we keep on being very involved and very active, because some of the things that they're talking about really affect us as a district, and not everybody thinks the way we do. And so it's important that we're there. I mean, one of the things, Dr. Favela, that got a lot of people saying no, and I was just shocked, was this thing about whether we should continue to lobby the legislators as far as a 4-hour block and separating the children for those 4 hours. I mean, we passed it, but it was one of the ones that had the highest amount of no, we don't want that in there. We don't want to fight for that. And my gosh, come on. What are you thinking? The other one was on the LBGT issues and equities and talking about, on there we already have, you can't discriminate because of gender, you can't discriminate because of ethnicity, religious preference, et cetera, et cetera. And they wanted to put in also some of the LBGT language, such as transgenders. And that one was another one that got a really high, amount of people. And there was an actual big debate on whether or not we should.
And amendments.
The amendments.
They all failed.
Yeah, they all failed finally. We finally went to the original one. But everybody was trying to throw in these amendments that was, but why do we need that? We've already have this thing saying, that we need to be fair as far as race and ethnicity and gender, but they didn't understand that there's this other piece here that we need to add in there. And after all the amendments that one took forever, we finally ended up with
the original language.
The original one, which was good because it did include some of those other things that we should be talking about and we should be putting in there. So I'm glad that we were a part of it and that we're able to be there and that we're able to, make sure that those things occur.
Any other comments, Mr. Hamill?
Well, one thing that it would be nice if our principals and folks that are in charge of discipline would be able to attend the conferences, because a lot of that applies to what their daily function at the schools. and it would give them an eye-opener of what the do's and don'ts of what's happening out there, and what they're doing and what they shouldn't be doing. But, you know, that's something I'd like to toss out there for next year.
And I've said that
Yeah.
for many years.
Yeah.
I think it's critical for our administrators
Yeah.
at the site levels.
Get on the Flix bus and head them out there.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is suggestion for future agenda items. Are there any suggestions? Mr. Hernandez?
Mr. Crouch, I would like us to get some kind of presentation on how we work with students that are autistic. Doesn't have to be at the next board meeting. I know it takes a lot of time to get that information together, so it's not an urgent thing. As long as we get it before the end of the year, that'd be something that I'd just love to hear an update. I've, over the years, spent time going into classrooms and seeing self-contained versus non-self-contained environments. It's been about 2 years since I've done that, so before I go out to sites again, I'd love to hear an update of kind of where we are, because it's been a couple years, so if we could get something at a future board meeting.
Mr. Hamil?
Mr. Koch. I don't know if you're aware that in the very near future, there's going to be vapor intrusion testing at Challenger and at Elvira. And it has been done in the past, but what they're going to be doing now is they're going to be doing it on-site. The last testing that was done, I think, was eight years ago.
2010.
2010, right, 8 years ago. So the recommendation that was made to this mayor and city council, to the water department, that if they would do the testing on-site. And it was passed, so I'd like to see if Mr. Biggs or Mr. Lou, Jeff Biggs, would come and give us a presentation of what the process is and when it's going to be done.
Mr. Holmes, did you have something to add to that?
No,
Okay. Any other suggestions for future agenda items? Is there a move to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Are you sure?
Second. Sure.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Dawn?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Aye.
Mr. Padilla?
Yes.
Ms. Quintero?
Aye.
Mr. Crouch?
Aye. Motion passes. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.